My parents treated me like a backup ATM and dumped me in the garage during a snowstorm. I stayed quiet, cut the money, drew a legal line, and let the ones who used me discover what life looks like without the sun they took for granted. I, 28 male, am Tyler. But back then, I was just the kid who knew how to plunge the toilet, mow the lawn, vacuum the stairs, and disappear. When Josh, 24 male, my brother, wanted the living room. Josh, still jobless, still lives with our parents, Linda and Ron. He spends 8 to 10 hours a day gaming and yelling into a headset like he's in some international war zone. Back when I lived at home, I couldn't go a day without hearing Tyler help your brother or Tyler take out the trash while Josh finishes his game. Guess who never finished the game? I moved out at 20, not because I had the money or a stable job. I left because if I stayed, I wasn't going to graduate. I was in university full-time, trying to pass engineering while being their free labor. My grades were tanking. Every time I cracked open a book, I'd hear footsteps, then a knock, then a Tyler. Could you just... And it was always something. Dishes, laundry, fixing the Wi-Fi, picking up Josh's Taco Bell because he was busy. Kid had zero responsibilities, but still acted like he was CEO of the house. They didn't even pretend it was equal. Once I had the flu, like full fever. Couldn't stand up type flu. And my mom still asked me to scrub the bathroom floor because Josh has allergies. I was on my knees sweating through a hoodie while he played FIFA and screamed at 12-year-olds online. When I finally left, it wasn't with some big dramatic exit. I found a crappy apartment near campus, shared it with 2 guys who didn't know how to recycle, and spent my nights with earplugs because of the guy upstairs and his tap-dancing dog. But at least it was mine. At least I could sit in silence. No Josh, no orders, just me and a mattress on the floor. But here's the part I'm still mad about. I still helped them. Even after leaving, I'd drop off groceries when they were tight on money. I once sent $600 because the gas got shut off in January. I helped Dad fix the water heater. Drove home 3 hours one weekend because the fridge broke, and Mom didn't trust anyone else to look at it. They didn't ask Josh. He was busy networking on Discord. I kept giving because I thought that's what good sons did. I told myself they didn't know better, that they were just tired, that maybe they did change, that someday they'd see all the things I did, but they never did. Josh could crash the car, he's told too. And Mom would say, he's just under a lot of pressure. Meanwhile, I bring up being overwhelmed with work and she tells me I always play the victim. The worst part, they gaslit the hell out of me. When I'd push back, even slightly, I'd get hit with, "You're so ungrateful." Or, "We treated you exactly the same as Josh." That last one always made me laugh. Once I asked Mom straight up why Josh got a new phone for his birthday while I got socks. Her answer, "You're more responsible, Tyler. You don't need flashy things." Like being reliable was a reason to get the leftovers. By the time this past Thanksgiving rolled around, I hadn't been home in about 6 months. We'd been doing the usual dance. They'd call when something broke. I'd show up. I wasn't happy about it, but I still felt like maybe, just maybe, they appreciated me in their own twisted way. Then came the garage incident, but we're not there yet. Leading up to Thanksgiving, they guilted me hard. "It's been too long. Josh misses you." "He didn't. Your father's been having back pain." I gave in because I was raised to give in. I told them I'd come by the night before. The forecast said snow, but I figured I could crash in my old room like I used to and drive home early Friday. So I packed a bag, grabbed a pumpkin pie on the way because I'm the only one who brings anything, and drove the 3.5 hours through sleet. When I got there, nothing was ready. No room, no bed. No thank you for coming. Just chaos. Josh was on the couch with his feet up, screaming into his headset. Mom was burning green beans. Dad grunted a hello from his recliner. And guess who had to go reset the router? I did it automatically, out of habit, like a dog that still comes when it's kicked. The snow picked up hard that night. Roads were iced. I checked my phone and saw accident alerts popping up. I was stuck there for the night, whether I liked it or not. I asked Mom where I was staying. Her face lit up like she just remembered something inconvenient. "Oh, right." So we had a change of plans. That's when she told me someone else was coming, someone I didn't expect, and my room, my usual backup spot, gone. I'd barely finished pulling off my snow-soaked boots when Mom hit me with it. "Oh, by the way," she said like she was commenting on the weather. "Josh's friend Bryce is staying over tonight too. Isn't that nice?" I froze. "Wait, what? Bryce?" she repeated like I didn't hear her the first time. "He and Josh are going to play video games all night and catch up. He's sleeping over." I blinked. "Where?" Mom didn't even look at me. She was already stirring something on the stove. No, your old room. I stood there in the hallway holding a grocery bag in one hand, snow still clinging to my jacket, and just stared at her. So where am I supposed to sleep? That's when she gave me the look that this is already decided and your opinion is not needed look. And with a straight face, she said, well, we set up a cot in the garage. There's a heater. You'll be fine. I said, the garage? Like I misheard her. She sighed, already annoyed. Tyler, it's just one night. Don't start. There's a snowstorm. You can't drive back. It's not a big deal. I felt this weird silence in my chest, like my whole body just went quiet. This wasn't just Bryce crashing on a couch. This wasn't a space issue. This was we had to choose between you and Josh's buddy and you lost. Let me paint the picture for you. Bryce is 25 maybe. No one knows. He's been around forever. He's the guy who once microwaved foil and laughed when it sparked. He vapes inside, talks over people, and refers to himself in third person. Loud, obnoxious, zero self-awareness. The kind of guy who shows up uninvited and eats all the leftovers before anyone else gets seconds. And they gave him my room. I asked, Mom, you're seriously giving my room to Bryce? Some guy who's not even family? She shrugged. Josh doesn't ask for much. I almost laughed. He lives here rent-free. She flinched like I'd cursed at her. Don't start with that tone. It's Thanksgiving. You always do this. I drove through a snowstorm, I said, calm but boiling inside. I brought groceries. Pie. I thought I'd sleep in my old bed for one night. It's just a bed, she said flatly. Don't be selfish. That word selfish, that was her favorite weapon. Used it every time I asked for anything. Every time I said no to something ridiculous. Helping them move furniture at midnight. Not selfish. Saying I was tired after working a 12-hour shift. Selfish. I didn't argue. I just walked outside into the garage to see what they set up. It was freezing. The cot was jammed between Dad's tool bench and a stack of broken patio chairs. A bare bulb buzzed overhead. The space heater looked like it had been stolen from a yard sale in 1999. One of the legs on the cot was wobbly, and I swear I saw a spider underneath it building a duplex. I could see my breath. This was their solution, their offer. For the son who paid their gas bill last winter. For the guy who drove 4 hours through sleet to spend a holiday with people who saw him as a backup plan. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. He texted, "How's Thanksgiving?" I sent back a photo of the cot. Then, sleeping in the garage, Josh's buddy took my room. Not even 10 seconds later. Bro, what the hell? Come here. My mom made extra. You're not sleeping in no damn garage. I hesitated. The roads were iced. It was late. I didn't want to make a scene, but then I thought about the whole scene again. Bryce in my bed, probably shirtless, stinking of Monster Energy and Bo, while I froze next to the snowblower. I grabbed my bag, walked quietly back inside, didn't slam anything, didn't announce it, just went upstairs, grabbed my toothbrush and charger, packed everything into my duffel, and walked out the back door. Nobody even noticed. By the time I got to Marcus's place, I could feel my whole body relax. His mom opened the door and practically dragged me inside. You look frozen, honey. Take your shoes off. Come eat. No passive aggression, no guilt, just warmth. Within 10 minutes, I had a plate of food, a warm drink, and a spot on the couch next to Marcus while his little brother played some dumb movie in the background. They treated me like I mattered. It shouldn't have been mind-blowing, but it was because at my own parents' house, I was the handyman, the bank, the backup plan. At Marcus's, I was just Tyler. We stayed up late playing board games and making fun of bad TV. His mom asked how work was going and actually listened when I answered. She even offered me the guest room without me saying a word. Clean sheets and a heated blanket. It's all yours. That night, laying in a real bed in a warm room that didn't smell like fertilizer and old tires, I felt something shift. I'd been excusing my family's behavior for years, writing it off, telling myself I owed them, that they meant well, that maybe if I did enough, helped enough, sacrificed enough, they'd treat me like I mattered. But they didn't. They gave my bed to Bryce. They put me in the garage. The next morning, I woke up to 42 missed calls, texts from Mom, Dad, Josh, all pissed, confused, or fake concerned. Where are you? Are you seriously pouting in the garage? Come back. You're making it awkward. Bryce said you were acting weird. Your father is disappointed. You embarrassed us in front of a guest. A guest? That's what they called Bryce. And me? What was I? Not one message asked if I was okay. Not one said, sorry. I sat there reading them, sipping hot coffee while Marcus's dog climbed onto my lap and realized I was done. Not angry, just done. I didn't reply, didn't explain myself, didn't give them the satisfaction of a response. Later that day, Marcus and I went to the mall. I bought myself a full gaming setup, tower, dual monitors, chair, everything. Stuff I'd been putting off for years because what if mom and dad need help again? I told myself I couldn't afford it. But the truth is, I was too used to sacrificing for people who wouldn't do the same for me. That gaming setup was the first real thing I ever bought just for me. And it felt good. I didn't answer any of their messages. Not the calls, not the texts, not the passive-aggressive guilt trips. After the Bryce incident and the whole garage situation, I just shut it off. Phone on silent, mind finally clear. I wasn't going to play their little game anymore, and for the first time in years the silence felt good. It took them less than 24 hours to shift from confusion to entitlement. Classic move. They didn't say, "We're sorry you had to sleep in the garage." They said, "You embarrassed us." Not, "We were wrong," just, "You made things awkward." That kind of crap. All image, no substance. I crashed at Marcus's for another day. I figured why rush back to my apartment when I was finally around people who didn't treat me like a utility. On Sunday, I drove home, blasted some music, and just let myself enjoy the feeling of being free. That's when the real turning point happened. I sat down in my apartment, opened my budgeting app, and looked at everything I'd been sending my parents for the last few years. Rent, $300 per month, started when they said money was tight after Dad's hours got cut. I agreed to chip in just until things stabilized. That was 4 years ago. Never stopped. Groceries, $100 here, $150 there. Usually after a text from mom like, "Wish I could afford real meat, but it's okay. We'll make do." Car repairs, $650 last year. Dad's transmission died. They needed help. I wired the money the same day. Never heard a thank you. Electric bill once got covered automatically from my account because I was still a CO signer from years back. I didn't even realize they were still using my payment info. It all added up. Thousands. I never complained, never asked for it back. I thought I was being a good son. I thought I was doing what family does. But then they threw me in a garage to make room for Bryce. The guy who once lit a firecracker in our mailbox when we were teens and thought it was funny. That's when it clicked. I wasn't family to them. I was a tool. A walking debit card. A free IT guy. The emotional shock absorber. The guy who never has his own family and always has extra to give. So I opened my phone, pulled up every account, and started cutting them off. First was rent. I canceled the recurring transfer I had set up through my bank. It had always gone directly to their landlord's Zelle account. I'd even labeled it family rent, like an idiot. Second, I logged into the utility provider's website, found my name still listed as the secondary on the electric and water accounts, removed it, changed all my bank info off file. I called them directly and said, "Hey, I don't live there. I don't want my name attached to anything anymore." The guy on the phone said, "Do you want to be notified if they miss a payment?" I said, "No, let them find out the hard way." Then I went back through old texts and emails and made a list of everything they ever asked for money-wise just to remind myself. It read like a damn invoice. "Tyler, the fridge is dying. Can you spot us? Car registration is late again. Can you get groceries for us before Thanksgiving? We're low. Rent short this month. Just $200. Gas got cut off. It's embarrassing. Please don't tell anyone." It was all so normal at the time. Like I'd been trained to think their problems were my responsibility, but I was 28. They were nearly 60 and they still acted like the world owed them something. So I stopped it. All of it. And of course it didn't go unnoticed. Monday morning I get a text from Mom. "Hey honey, rent hasn't come through yet. Did something glitch?" I left it on read. Tuesday, another message. "Not sure if you forgot, but the landlord texted me. They charge late fees now. Can you send it today? Then we've been so stressed with the holidays. I know you had a moment over the weekend, but we love you. Can you please just handle it? Handle it like I'm their personal assistant with a credit card." I didn't reply. That night Marcus came over and I told him everything. "Dude," he said, "this is the most peaceful I've ever seen you, and you haven't even done anything petty yet." I laughed, but he wasn't wrong. I wasn't slashing tires or blasting them online. I was just backing away quietly. Finally, by Wednesday, Dad called. I ignored it. Then he left a voicemail. Look, I don't know what's going on, but you're scaring your mother. We rely on you, Tyler. We always have. That's what family does. You help us. We raise you. It's a cycle. You don't just cut people off because you're mad about sleeping arrangements. Sleeping arrangements. That's how he framed it. Not we gave your room to some random idiot. Not we made you sleep in a freezing garage during a snowstorm. Just sleeping arrangements. That voicemail pissed me off more than the garage did because it proved they still didn't get it. They didn't want to get it. Then came Thursday, 1 week after Thanksgiving. I get a text from Josh of all people. Yo, rent bounced. Mom's freaking fix that. That's all he said. No, please. No, how are you? Just a command like I owed him. So, I sent one message. I don't pay rent for people who treat me like a backup plan. No follow-up, just that. He never replied. By the weekend, Mom switched gears, no more asking. Now it was guilt. I don't know what we did to deserve this. You always make things harder than they need to be. I raised you, I fed you, and this is how you repay me. We've sacrificed so much. I didn't respond, so she kept going. Do you know how hard it is for us right now? Your father's back is out again. I'm doing my best, but we can't do this alone. Josh is looking for work, but things are tough. You know how it is. You've always had more. You're lucky. You've always been lucky. That one stopped me cold. I've always had more. I had less. I had expectations, pressure, guilt, responsibility. Josh had flat screens, video games, and zero consequences. I had student debt, 3 jobs in college, and chores every day while he napped. I was never the lucky one. I was just the one who didn't complain loud enough to get excused. By mid-December, they figured it out. I was done. I heard from a cousin that they were now saying I had mental health problems, and that they were giving me space. That's how they spun it to the rest of the family. They didn't mention the garage. They didn't mention Bryce. They didn't tell anyone that I'd been sending them money for years just to stay afloat. Nope. Just Tyler, the unstable, dramatic son who disappeared for no reason. Whatever. Let them tell their stories. I canceled the last thing I was paying for, a monthly subscription they had tied to my Apple ID from forever ago. Netflix or something. I don't even know. Then I blocked Mom's number. Then Josh. Dad's was the last one I muted. Not because he was different, but because I think part of me was still waiting to see if he would get it. He didn't. So after I cut the financial cord, things went quiet. Then the switch flipped. The tone of the text changed from, "We miss you" to "How dare you." They weren't even hiding it anymore. I was the villain, the ungrateful child who abandoned his family, stopped contributing, and left them to fend for themselves after everything we did for you. It was kind of funny, honestly, like I hadn't been floating their rent for 4 years while Josh was playing Fortnite and vaping in the kitchen. Anyway, I ignored all of it. I went on with my life. Work was steady, bills were paid, and for once, I actually had money left over at the end of the month. I bought a decent office chair, ordered groceries without checking my account balance, and even signed up for a local gym. Not because I'm a gym rat or anything. I just wanted to do something for myself for once. A normal life. Basic stuff most people take for granted. And then they escalated hard. It started with a weird call from my insurance company. "Hi, Mr. Carter. Just confirming the accident report you filed this morning." I paused. "What accident report?" She double-checked. "You're Tyler Carter, right?" "License plate ending in 92 FJ. "Yeah." "Well, we received a report that your vehicle was involved in a hit and run this morning. Police were contacted. Damage was noted on the front passenger side of the vehicle." I nearly laughed. "My car is parked outside my apartment right now." She went quiet, then said, "You may want to go take a look." I hung up, heart already pounding. Walked outside and yeah, there it was. Passenger mirror smashed. Deep scratches along the door. Looked like someone keyed it with a nail and then whacked the side panel with something heavy. Paint transfer from another vehicle. Blue, maybe from a truck, but no real dents. Just enough to mess it up and make it expensive. I stood there in the cold just staring at it, trying to piece together what the hell just happened. Then I checked my security cam. Small device sticks to my living room window, faces the lot. I don't usually check it unless something shady is going on. That day, shady was an understatement. I scroll back to 6:47 a.m. A familiar blue Ford pulls in. Dad gets out, looks around, stares directly at my camera for half a second, then walks out of frame toward my car. A few minutes later, he gets back in and leaves. The audacity. I stood there frozen. For a second, I thought maybe it was a mistake. Maybe he parked too close. Maybe it was accidental. But no, he stared straight into my camera like he was checking if it was real. That wasn't a mistake. That was a message. I didn't even know what to feel. I wasn't angry at first. I was just stunned. You grow up thinking your parents are supposed to protect you. That no matter how bad it gets, they wouldn't hurt you. And then your dad keys your car because you stopped paying his rent. That's when the anger hit. I went back inside, sat at my desk, pulled up my phone. No text from Dad that day. Nothing since I stopped paying rent. But I had a gut feeling. So I unblocked him and boom, there it was. From earlier that morning before the insurance call. I hope you understand how serious this is. You don't walk away from family. Not without consequences. Another one. We need your help. You've had your little tantrum. Now step up again. And the final one. 10 minutes after he vandalized my car. You made us do this. You made us do this. Like I forced his hand by refusing to keep enabling him. Like damaging my property was justified because I stopped being his free ATM. That text flipped a switch in me. The guilt I'd carried for years about not being enough, about leaving home, about putting myself first, melted away. All the be the bigger person crap gone. I was done being bigger. I was done being anything for them. I filed a police report that same day. Gave them the footage, the messages, everything. They said they'd follow up, but I already knew how this would go. Technically, a misdemeanor. Not enough damage for felony vandalism, but still a crime. Whether they pursued it or not didn't matter. What mattered was the line had been crossed and they couldn't uncross it. The next day, Marcus came over and saw the car. They did this. I just nodded. He looked at me for a second, then said, "We got to change your locks." I hadn't even thought about that, but he was right. They still had a spare. I'd given it to Mom years ago in case I lost mine. That afternoon, we went to Home Depot, grabbed new locks and a security camera for the front door. Spent the rest of the evening swapping everything out. I even changed the code on my building's keypad and emailed the landlord about unauthorized access. He was cool about it. Said he'd send a warning to all tenants and ask them not to buzz in people without ID. I wasn't just cutting them off financially anymore. I was locking them out, period. Physically, emotionally, everything. 3 days later, I get a long email from Mom. Subject: please read. We're desperate. I wish I could paste the whole thing here, but it was basically a novella of entitlement and projection. Some highlights. You've always been too sensitive. This family gave you everything. Your father is only trying to wake you up. You're forcing us into a corner. We've tried everything else. We didn't raise you to be this cold. We miss you, but we need you more. That last part got to me. Not we miss you because we love you. Not we're sorry, not we messed up. We need you more. Need like I'm a tool they lost in the garage and are mad they can't find again. After that I went no contact completely. New number blocked their emails. I even sent a formal letter to their landlord stating I had no financial obligation to that property, and that any future payments were not my responsibility. I also spoke with a lawyer. Marcus had a friend who helped for cheap and documented everything, just in case they tried something worse. It's been just over a month since the car incident. Damage came out to $1,100. Insurance covered about a third. The rest was mine to deal with. Normally, I just eat the cost and move on, because that's what I've done most of my life. Fix the mess and say nothing. Not this time. This time I filed a report. Police classified it as criminal mischief in the 2nd degree. Not felony level, but enough to get the process started. Since it was his first formal offense that I'd reported anyway, he wasn't going to jail or anything. But civil court, that was a different game. I filed a small claims lawsuit the same week, $1,100 for property damage. With evidence that clean, it was just a matter of paperwork and showing up. He got served 2 days later. My mom texted me at 3 a.m., the night he got the notice. Her message just said, "Are you seriously suing your father?" After everything, didn't respond. Then came a flood of new ones. "We were just trying to get your attention. You made us do this by cutting us off. You're overreacting. Drop the case. You're going to ruin the family over a scratch on a car. Bryce thinks you're being dramatic. Like I care what that thinks." Blocked her again. Let the court handle it. 3 weeks later, we showed up for the hearing. Small courtroom. Maybe 6 people total. He showed up in jeans and a flannel like he just walked off a job site. Brought Mom with him. She wasn't even supposed to speak, but she kept trying to interrupt the judge anyway. I had my documentation printed and organized, photos of the damage, invoice from the repair shop, screenshot of my bank balance the day of the incident, footage from the security cam showing the entire event clear as day. Text from both of them that basically confirmed it. The judge barely had to ask questions. My dad tried to say, "I was just stopping by, I didn't touch anything." Judge asked why the car was scratched 2 minutes after he showed up. No answer. Mom chimed in with, "This is all a misunderstanding." Judge told her to stay quiet. She didn't. I asked the judge if I could file for a restraining order based on the fact that I felt unsafe and there was a clear pattern of escalation. Brought up the voicemail he left after the vandalism. "You made us do this." The judge actually nodded. Said the threat was vague, but paired with the damage and the entitlement in the messages, it crossed the line. They granted it on the spot. Court ruling. They owe me $1,100 plus court fees. They are legally prohibited from coming within 200 feet of me, my residence, or my workplace. Any further attempt to contact me is considered harassment and will be prosecuted. When the gavel hit, Mom gasped like someone had died. Dad just stared ahead, didn't say a word. That same night, I got 2 emails from extended family, one from my mom's cousin. "You really took them to court?" "What happened to family?" Another from an uncle I barely talked to. "Your mom's a mess. Maybe just talk to her and drop it." I didn't reply to either because here's the thing. They don't care what happened. They just want the status quo back. They want me to go back to paying and fixing and absorbing every crisis like nothing ever happened. Because it's easier that way for them, but not for me. I wasn't about to get guilted into submission because family. This was business. They damaged my property. They got served. They lost. End of story. Next few weeks were quiet, almost too quiet, which made me suspicious, but I didn't dig. I just kept receipts, changed all my accounts, put fraud alerts on my bank, updated passwords, even notified my apartment complex and gave them a photo of my parents' truck. I wasn't taking chances. The judgment forced them to pay, but they didn't do it immediately. Took them nearly a month to send the check. And when it arrived, it came with a handwritten note from Mom. "I hope this money buys your happiness. Just remember who raised you." I cashed it, shredded the note. Marcus and I were talking about it later, and he just said, "Dude, I'm glad you finally treated this like a job and not a family issue." And that's exactly it. You don't negotiate with people who think they own you, you handle them. It's been 6 months since I filed the lawsuit. They paid, they shut up, and the restraining order has held. No surprise visits, no phone calls, no flying monkeys from extended family trying to play mediator. For the first time in years, they were finally forced to live without me, and apparently they couldn't. I didn't bother to track them or ask around. But you know how things work. People talk. In early spring, I started getting little updates from people I never asked to hear from. One of my cousins messaged me out of nowhere with a screenshot of a GoFundMe page. The title, "Help Ron and Linda Get Back on Their Feet." No joke. It had a photo of my parents standing next to what looked like the back of a U-Haul. They'd written this whole sob story about being displaced, out of work, and abandoned by their son after a misunderstanding. Said they were living out of their truck, that my dad's back issues left him disabled, that they were doing their best but needed the kindness of others to survive. They didn't mention that the reason they were living out of a truck was because the guy with back issues keyed his own son's car and got hit with a restraining order. They also forgot to mention the 4 years of rent money, groceries, and utility payments I gave them before that. But yeah, GoFundMe said I just cut them off for no reason. Real selective memory. I didn't donate, obviously. A few people did. Some old church friends, maybe a relative or two who didn't know the full story. They raised like $800 before it died off. Couple weeks later, someone told me the landlord finally evicted them, 3 months behind on rent. My guess is they used my last payment to float a couple months and then crashed hard once that dried up. Once Josh lost his free ride in the backup ATM, me shut down. The whole house of cards fell apart. Then someone told me the truck broke down, no money to fix it. That's when they were officially homeless. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see them again. But last week, I stopped at the local Aldi. Normal errand. Got my eggs, bread, whatever. Walked down the aisle near the frozen section, and there they were, Mom and Dad, standing next to the clearance bread bin, looking like they hadn't showered in a week. Both wearing layers of random clothes, the kind of stuff people donate to shelters. Shopping cart had maybe 4 items in it. They didn't see me at first. I almost walked the other way, but my cart had a squeaky wheel, and I guess it caught their attention. My mom turned. Her eyes went wide. She grabbed Dad's arm. He looked over, stared for a second, then started walking toward me like he forgot there was a restraining order with his name on it. I didn't move. I just stood there, calm, cart in front of me, didn't say a word. He got about 15 feet away before I held up my hand and said, "Stop." He did barely. My mom tried to talk first. "Tyler, please. We didn't know it would go this far." I didn't answer. She kept going. "We lost the house. We're staying in a shelter. Your dad can't find work. Josh left. We don't even know where he is." I said nothing. My dad jumped in next. "You made your point. Okay, you proved it. We get it. But you need to help now." "Do I?" I said. "You're still our son." He snapped. "That doesn't change." I looked him dead in the eye. "You violated a restraining order," I said. "That does change things." He went quiet. My mom started crying. "We're starving. Please, just this once." I said, "No." Simple, flat no. I took out my phone, showed them the screen. Already recording. Timestamp. Video saved. "If you follow me," I said, "I'll call the cops again." Then I turned my cart and walked away. Left them standing there next to a $1.39 loaf of bread with nothing but excuses and bad decisions. Got back to my apartment, filed a report through the restraining order hotline, logged the encounter, uploaded the video, covered my bases. 2 days later, I got confirmation. They were warned again. Another violation and it's automatic arrest. Haven't heard a word since. They thought they could burn the bridge and I'd rebuild it out of guilt. They thought breaking my stuff would bring me back into the fold. They thought being broke and loud would scare me into helping. Instead, I let them fall. They always thought I was the soft one, the one they could count on to bail them out no matter what they did. Turns out they miscalculated.